Hello, can everyone hear me? You can just simply type in the chat there. Fantastic. And do you see the visual displays of data title slide? And if you do, then we are ready to proceed. Fantastic. Good evening. I'm Dr. Reggie Taylor, and I'm from the Office of Research and Doctoral Services. And I will be facilitating this session this evening. A couple of terms ago, maybe 2 or 3 terms ago, I decided to do these sessions, to help students through what I call your quantitative journey. Now, by journey, I mean, you obviously may be taking some quantitative courses with Walden, and some of you may even go on to do a quantitative dissertation if you haven't started your dissertation already. But regardless, when you do start conducting research, you should do what we call an exhaustive review of the literature. And by that, I mean that, for example, if you're doing a qualitative study, I'm going to expect in a literature review to see the reporting and the critical analysis and synthesis of quantitative literature too on your topic. And when you do that, you'll be able to understand what you're reading, what you're looking at, and report holistically on what we know about your topic. So I think there's going to be value in this for everyone. Before I move on, I just wanted to ask everyone, you can just put in the chat there, are you here because you're taking your quantitative course? Are you in your capstone phase, be it dissertation or whatever they call it in your program? Where is everyone at? And I can get a better idea of our audience here. So we have some capstone course, okay, preparing final study, okay, fantastic. So I think everyone will get some value out of this. But what you will see specifically is that this is aligned with the quantitative course, I believe the first course. But regardless, again, as I say, you're going to need to understand the visual display of data. As I like to say, picture is worth 1,000 words, okay? So let's go ahead and let's look at where we're going to go here. And I'm going to go through a few housekeeping notes. And then I'm going to talk about my main objective here, and that's to ease your anxiety. And I think all of us are educated to know that, we won't learn everything in a 45-minute session about any topic. But what I want is for you to, when you perhaps work on your weekly assignment or you look at a journal article and you see a visual display of data, that you understand what you are looking at. Because one of the ideas in research, when you're writing specifically like results, you don't want to put a lot of words in explaining things, in narrative. Suppose you had 10 or 15 groups. You wouldn't, in a narrative paragraph, state the average, the standard deviation for all of those. It's just impossible to look at. So visual displays of data gives us a lot of information that we can easily understand and very quickly, okay? Now, but before we get into that, you'll be visually displaying data, but what and who are you displaying this data for? And by that, the question is, what is the unit of analysis? And we'll talk about that. And very important of the scales of measurement, which I call, the foundation of quantitative research. And we'll talk about that. But then what we'll do is specifically go into the visual displays of data. And this session will be limited to looking at grouped data, which is nominal data, and ungrouped data, which is continuous data, okay? And we will look specifically at these 4 graphs. We will not go beyond that, and we can't do that. But again, it's just you to get an idea of the graph process, where to go in SPSS, what do you look at, and how do you interpret what you look at? And you'll see that once you do this, you'll be able to go into pretty much any of the graph features and produce any type of graph that you want. Now, I'll give you an exemplar, and this will be for you to keep, which I'll put into the chat before we end. And this exemplar is pretty much an example of the application assignment for those taking the quantitative reasoning course, okay? So that should be very helpful. And then I will lead you to some quantitative resources. And I have just something that I'm playing around with called a knowledge check. And if you'd like to, when you get this presentation, which you will get a copy of also, so you'll come away from here with a lot of helpful resources. You can just play around and click on that link to go to the knowledge check, and it's going to ask you a few questions, I think, about visual displays of data. But that's just for you to play with, and nothing I see or anything like that. And let me know how that works for you. And mainly you do that through this survey here. That's going to be very critical. The reason that I'm here tonight talking to you is because 3 terms ago, I went on and I started one of these sessions, and I put a survey together, and just overwhelmingly, the students indicated that we need more of this. We want more of this. Okay, so I need to know through the survey what's working, what's not working, et cetera. Because again, you build this process, not me. Okay, you built this, telling me what you need. Is it working? Is it not? And I look at that feedback and I alter what I do. Okay, so having said that, one of the first things that we're going to talk about is, of course, please everyone mute your lines, and I'm just going to hit the mute all. I can do it on my end. Okay. Now, the session is recorded, and let me double check to make sure the recording button is on, because the beauty of this is that you will be able to have this as an on-demand session anytime you want to. Just click on that link and look at this live session that we are having here tonight. Okay. Now, critical is that we're using SPSS version 29. That's the version that I am using. Some individuals may say, oh, my screen looks a little bit different, or I don't see where you're clicking. Understand, you may be using a different version, but the concepts and everything is exactly the same once you get to the right button. The next thing that's important is that this is not a general statistics seminar, meaning that I'm going to focus solely on the abstract content. What you read that this session was going to be about, that's what I'm going to focus on, okay? I can't really answer all types of quantitative questions, et cetera, and I think you understand that, okay? But I do ask that you use the Q&A thread when you ask a question, because I'm a one-man gang here. I have 3 screens in front of me. I've got several documents I want to give you, and I'm admitting people into the classroom, so I'm looking at a lot of places. So it will be helpful if you use the Q&A thread, and I can focus on that to make sure that I get your questions answered, okay? And then again, we have the survey and we have the knowledge check. Now, the first thing is unit of analysis. What do we mean by that in research? This is the object about which information is collected. For example, we are all human beings, we're individuals. If we participated in a research study and someone wanted to collect data from us, the individual is the unit of analysis, okay? The individual. But now someone may say, well, you know what? I work in healthcare and I want to compare hospitals and I want to compare them on, say, readmission rates. Well, the hospital would be the unit of analysis. So you would have to collect data for X amount of hospitals. This is very important to understand, okay? Let's just say educational research. You're going to do it in the school system, okay? Well, and you want to know something about the school, the graduation rates. Well, the school would be the unit of analysis. Does everybody understand that concept before we move forward, okay? And we're going to look into a data set here so we can make sure that we understand when we look into a data set, what do we mean by unit of analysis? Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to attempt to stop the presentation. Okay, I'm going to end the show. And then I'm going to open up an SPSS data file. And you should see this file. Give me just a second here. Where's that data? Okay, the data's behind there. Okay, now what I have, my friends, is an SPSS data file open. And what I'll do now is just take a couple of minutes just to kind of acclimate you to what you're looking at when you look at an SPSS data file, okay? We're really not focusing too much on that. But here you see that if you follow my cursor, you'll see that down at the bottom, I have 3 views: an overview, a data view, and a variable view. And yes, Brittany, go Big Blue. So as you can see now, the row that I have highlighted row number 1. Now row number 2 is highlighted, okay? But what that will tell you, if you look, that's the unit of analysis. So obviously, if you see gender, that means that we were collecting data at the individual level. So the individual had to tell us what their gender was. We also asked for something about education. What was their education level? But as you can see, that this information is all at the individual level. For example, an individual may have had some primary school. The next may have had some secondary school. So you may look at a data file that may have collected data at another unit of analysis, okay? We good with that? Because whatever results you have, whatever you're reporting, is going to be reported for that unit of analysis, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and just minimize this, and I'm going to get back to the PowerPoint, okay? Now, the next important concept is the scales of measurement, and I believe you've read about that already in previous week of your course. But this, I think, if you grasp this concept, you're going to be fine in your quantitative journey. This is where all the big mistakes and the egregious errors are made because of a lack of understanding of the scales of measurement. Now, when we collect data at that unit of analysis, there are 4 different measurements. And in SPSS, we're going to have to tell SPSS what that measurement is for each variable. Now, for example, the first level that we're going to talk about is called the nominal. And when the variable is a nominal scale of measurement, that means it's categorical, okay? It's a categorical variable. So you're asking someone, are you male, female? If you're asking someone about their political affiliation, they're not going to give you a number. They're going to give you a category. I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm an independent, or whatever the case may be. Let's just say color. We can see that color, is categorical. And it requires what we call value labels in SPSS, and we'll look at that in just a second. But then you may have another variable, and that variable may be an ordinal measurement. Now, what do we mean by ordinal? Look at the 3 words, first 3 letters, or, in an order, some ranking order. We all have probably taken a questionnaire where someone asks us to rate something from, say, 1 to 5, going from low to high. That's an ordinal scale of measurement, and we call them Likert scales, okay? But as you can see, it's a rank order variable. Likely, more likely, very likely, etc. And that also requires value labels, which we'll look at in just a second, okay? Give me just a second here. Now, the next level or scale of measurement is what we call interval. Now, with interval, we have equal intervals, but the distinguishing characteristic, no true zero value. Now, what do we mean by that? Let's take the example of weather. Let's say you are in the field of weather or something, a geologist or something. And you're going to measure the temperature every day, and you're going to do some type of an analysis. Well, if on a certain day the temperature is 0, does that mean that there is no existence of weather or no existence of temperature? Does it mean that because it's 0? No, it doesn't. To me, it just simply means it's very cold. But now, there are variables that are the same thing, equal intervals, but they have a true 0 value. Reading achievement, age, weight, it could be 0. So down at the bottom here, I have a very detailed tutorial on the scales of measurement for you to take a look at that goes a little bit more in depth with that, okay? But the important thing is that there's 4 scales of measurement. Now, why is that important? Let's go back to SPSS and see how we relate this to SPSS, okay? So I'm going to, give me a second, end this show. Now let's go back into SPSS. Here's a data file. Now, but note I'm in data view. I'm now going to click to variable view. This gives me the information on how my data file is set up. These are not the values that I collected. That's the data view. Okay? Now, look at these variables here. Gender. Remember we said we have a nominal scale of measurement? Note that gender says nominal here. You have to make sure that if you're building a data file, that you categorize that as nominal. Now, let's do one more thing. Remember I said it has to have value labels? Let's go right here to values. Now, notice that I have the three little dots, and I click on those. That opens up, and look at what I have there. Those are the value labels. So anywhere in SPSS under the gender variable, if I put a 1 in, I know that's a male. And if I put a 2 in, that's a female. Remember, this is a categorical variable, but we will have to tell SPSS, give it a number. So we're just kind of recoding it. But does everybody understand that concept of it being a nominal variable and that it has to have data labels? Everybody okay with that? Let's take a look at one more nominal variable. Let's look at source. Now, what this data file is asking for is the source of someone's stress. Where does your stress come from, you see? Now, let's take a look. It's nominal. Now, remember, we're not asking someone how much stress are you experiencing, which may be measured by a number. We're saying, what category does your stress come from? Now, let's take a look at the value labels. Does everybody see that? And you can see that your stress can come from work. Your stress can come from your spouse or partner. It can come from a relationship, children, et cetera, et cetera. Does everybody understand that? So again, it was a nominal variable, and we have given it numbers, but we can't do any math with this. In other words, how much is work in a spouse? You can't give me a number, but you can tell me how many were in the work category and how many was in the spouse or partner category. Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Now, because you'll be looking in data files and you'll have to understand what these categories are. Okay, so now let's get out of here. Now, let's look at an ordinal one, if we have an ordinal one. And yes, we have right here, education. Now, this researcher has said that I'm going to use education as an ordinal variable. Let's look at the values. And you can see that this researcher said, I'm going to give the 1 to someone that was in primary school. I'm going to give a code of 2 for someone in secondary. But you're saying, Dr. Taylor, this is the same thing you did for a nominal variable. You simply just gave it categories. Yes, I did. But what makes this different is that these are ordered. They're going in the ranking order. You see, primary is not as high as some secondary education. Some secondary education is not as high as completed high school, so on and so forth. So it's an ordinal, the way that this researcher has characterized that. Does everybody understand that? But you can say you want to just look at it as categorical, either way. But I want you to understand the data set. And as you go through this course, seeing these data files and these variables and understanding the scale of measurement. That's the first thing I want you to do when you start opening up these data files and looking at variables. Look at the scale of measurement to understand what you are working with, because that will determine a lot of other things that you have to do or other things that you can and cannot do. Okay, so now let's just look at one other thing here. And I saw a question, and I'm going to get to that question. Now let's just look at a scale variable. All we're doing here is saying the person on a scale, well, whatever the rating is, just tell us what it is. Now let's look at data view. Stress. So what this was someone was given an instrument and say, rate yourself on 1 to 50 on stress. Person number one says, oops, where's the stress variable? My stress is 29. Okay, person number two says 22. So on and so forth. Does everybody see that? Okay, those are numbers, no categories. Now, the question was, what does the scale mean in the variable view? Because I said that there were 4 scales of measurement: nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. You do not see interval or ratio here. The scale, and I repeat, the scale will reflect an interval or ratio variable. Does everybody understand that in SPSS? Okay, so if it's interval or ratio, it will be scale. And then the other two are just as we listed, okay? So that's the relationship between the scales of measurement and when you are looking in a data set, okay? So anytime you have, again, a nominal variable, you want to make sure how many categories do I have? This could be male, it could be female. Now I'm going to show you one other tip that goes beyond what we're doing here, but I'm going to show you how this was created. Suppose now I'm going to add another category, and I'm going to call it non-binary, someone who does not want to respond to male or female. You would hit the plus sign, okay? And in here, I say 3, and I want 3 to equal non-binary, okay? Now, that means that now my data file, I can put in either 1, 2, or a 3. Does everybody see that? So let's go here now to gender. Okay, you see gender here, females and males. But I want to show you one other thing. I'm in this variable here now, females. But we said, Dr. Taylor, you gave that some numbers in the variable view. I did. Click up here in the alphanumeric, and I'm going to ask, does everybody see where my cursor is? The A1 in red. Do you see that? When you click that, now look in this gender column. Now watch what happens when I click alphanumeric. Does everybody see that? It simply put the code there. But now you may say, oh, I don't know what the 2 was or the 1 was. Simply click the alphanumeric again. You see that? But you see it's doing it for all these variables. Let's look at education. See all the different numbers? But I can't remember what the 5 was. So I just simply go, and I know it's completed something. What is that? Completed undergraduate. Is everybody okay with those basics before we move on? Because this is the foundation that we want to make sure we understand. And if you grasp this, I guarantee you, you're well on your way to success. Now, let's get back to the presentation and see what we have to do next. So now, what we have to do now is look at some visual displays for nominal data. And that's why I specifically put nominal, because what happens is that there are certain graphs that you could run for nominal data, and there are certain graphs that you cannot run for nominal data. That's why it's important to understand the scale of measurement. And nominal is categorical, we know, right? So how would I depict categorical data? Now, let me do one more thing here. And let me just kind of help reason with you here. Now, let's take a look at this data file again. This is categorical because, you know, it's an ordinal one. But let's look at the marital status, okay? Now, let's see what different categories we have. Single, steady relationship, blah, 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 okay? But suppose I said to you, this data set has 439 records. Suppose I say, how many completed undergraduate? Or give me a breakout by education. You can't look at this and tell me that, and you won't go through all this counting, but you can do a graph. And the first graph that we can do is the pie chart. Okay? Now, what we're going to do is a pie chart, and we'll go through the example of looking at a variable called the source of stress. It shows the parts of a whole. You use it when you have a small amount of groups. You wouldn't use this with 50, 60 groups because it becomes overcrowded. But let's take a look over here at the right. Tell me very quickly now, what is the largest source of stress here in this sample? Bingo. Do you see? You've answered that question. Just that simple. Out of that huge data set, suppose this data set had 5,000 records. It would still take you no longer to do that. Okay? Source, but that has to be a categorical variable. Is everybody okay and good before we move on? Now, the key is, how do we do it? When we get into SPSS, and we'll do this live in SPSS also, you will get to a graph top menu, arrow number 1. A drop-down menu will come. Now, this is where you may see some differences depending on the version of SPSS that you are using. But just simply here it says pie chart. And when you click here, you automatically know that I'm getting ready to do something with a nominal scale of measurement variable. In this case, just select summaries for the groups. Remember, group variable, we're grouping them, and we have to define it. Because SPSS to this point doesn't know what you're talking about. I know we're going to build a pie chart, and I know we're going to look at the group breakout, but I need to know more. So that's where we define, okay? And when we define, what we do is now tell it that we want the source of stress variable. This is where the variables will be. And we took that source of stress from here and put it over here and define my slices. This is the variable that I want to see. Now here up in the top, I can have my slices either represent the number or the percentage of cases. And I just chose percentages. But look at what happens when I get and I hit OK, and look at what I get. Now, not only did you tell me that the work was the highest category, but look at the percentage, 53%, right? How many individuals said this work was their source of stress? How many do you see? If I ask you that question, how many? The source of stress, exactly. You see now how quickly you have deciphered that 400 record data set by category of the source of stress? Right there is your answer. A picture is worth 1,000 words. What percent of individuals said that life in general is their source of stress? The percentage was 7 point, excuse me, my eyes are bad. But yeah, the 58 is the number. But yeah, my eyes are bad here, so I can't see that chart that good here. But you see what I'm saying here? You see all the information that's there for you? At a quick glance, there it is. Let me start looking at my data. That's all it is to a pie chart for nominal data. Okay, great. Now, let's run that pie chart in SPSS, though, before we move forward, okay? So we'll do it live. Remember, you'll get the presentation. You can do it yourself. So let's do that now. Let's get an SPSS. Remember, graphs, right? I want to do a pie chart. There's the summary for the groups of cases, right? Remember, I have to define it. Remember, I want the source of stress, so this wouldn't be here. and I would just simply take it and put it in here. And I select if I want the number or the percent. I have some titles and other options and things I can do, but we're not going to worry about that at this point. And you simply hit OK. Give it a second. And where's my output? We do it again. Hi. Fine. Some cases, okay. Here it goes. Does everybody see that? Well, it did it. It just took a while. Does everybody see that now? But this is the last one I just ran. Now notice, this is important. This is the last one that I ran. Notice you don't see the percentages and the ends. Now, I don't know why, because we selected that. But this is what I had to do. And this is, again, you'll play with SPSS. Now, any of these objects that come out in output, you can highlight those and you can edit them. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just highlight. You see, I kind of highlighted it, or however you have to, select it depending on Mac or Windows and your keys. But you see show data labels when I click here. Notice I'm going to put the source of stress up here. You see it says percent. So you just make sure that everything's up here. You hit apply. And then when the graph comes out, it will put all of that, those numbers and percentages on there. And you see now they're there. Okay. But the key is nominal data, we could do a pie chart. Now, let's look at the second graph, the bar graph. Same thing, categorical data, groups of data. Now, in this case, what I'm looking at here is the marital status, someone's marital status. Okay, I could have did the same thing with the other variable, but look at the marital status. Okay, single, steady relationship, living with a partner, blah, blah, blah. Categorical data, right? But I want to know the percent. What is the largest percent here of individuals in terms of the marital status? Just by looking at the graph, what do you see? The most of these individuals are what? Married for the first time. Bingo. You're describing your data set now, Brittany. Exactly. That's what you're doing. You're describing it, Makita. You're describing your data set by looking at output. What's the lowest category here? Widowed, obviously. I got the answers there. But yeah, you see. But now, again, let's take a look and see how we are able to now discern that so quickly from something. Let's bring up the data file again. And look at that. That was the marital status, right? So let's look at marital status. And as we can see now, if we go to the variable view, marital, and you see it broke it out by those categories for us, but in a graphical depiction. There we go. Okay. Now, but notice that in the data view, I can't get that information from the data. That's the beauty of the software. It will do the work for you. We just have to understand and tell it what we want it to do and understand what it's doing so that we can talk about it. Okay. Now, the other thing that I wanted to show you was that you may have to put this into an application or one of your assignment documents. Let me lower this. And it's very simple. This is just, again, a Windows function. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want to show you, let me get the graph again, how that's done. Now here I have a graph. Yeah, I can look at either one of these. It doesn't matter. My computer's it's kind of hanging up on me. So let's do that again. Computer's hanging up here with SPSS. But basically what you would be doing is just simply doing a copy and a paste function. So if you had an application assignment and it was after you do whatever you're supposed to do, copy and paste your graph, just do it right from the output. You right click, you copy, or you edit, you copy, and then you then paste it onto the Word document. Simple as that. That's a copy and a paste Windows function. Okay. Now, the next thing now that we want to do is just look at the bar graph and let's see how we do it. Same thing. From the graph menu, we simply go down to bar. In this case, we're just going to do a simple bar chart. Okay. Summary for the groups. And again, we have to tell SPSS what bar chart we wanted to create. And that's with the define function. When we get into the define function, okay, the define, again, either the n or the percentage, it doesn't matter, whatever you want. You put your variable in here, the marital status. Okay, and there's your marital status. Okay, right there for you. Everybody okay with the two graphs that we have created for nominal data, the pie chart and the bar chart? No, you don't have to always do summaries. Again, this is just the very basics. I mean, these graphs can get very extensive and very complicated. It depends on what you're trying to do. No, not necessarily. You do not always have to do that is the easy answer, okay? Now, suppose we look into a data set and we say we have to do something with continuous data. We know these are the straight numbers, not categories. So we have to ask ourselves, okay, now what graphs are appropriate for my continuous data? And remember, when we go into SPSS, that would be the scale variables, the interval ratio, right? So the graphs, two of them that are available, there's a host of things, will be the histogram. Excuse me, the histogram, you all are very familiar with that. They kind of plot stuff on that bell curve, okay? The x-axis, this is a total perceived stress variable. And we measured that, remember, from 1 to 50. 50 is the highest number over here. So how did everyone respond, on their scores? And the frequency here, we're saying that if this is, say, 35 here, 37, we're saying about 37 people scored at whatever this number is here. But let's look at this a little bit better, okay? Now, how do we do it? Graphs, same thing. Select the one that you want, the histogram. Remember, we have to put in a scale or a continuous variable. Now, I'm going to give you another tip in SPSS. You see the little ruler here? You notice these are little circles, blue, red, and green. This is a little ordered variable. That circle is a ruler. That tells you that that's a scale variable. So you can just even look at these little graphics here. We know that's the pie chart or the pieces of a whole. We know that's the ranking order, and we know that's either interval or ratio. Does everybody see that? It's another little tip to help you be a little bit more comfortable with SPSS and lower that anxiety. Okay, so when you're looking at this stuff, it's not Greek to you. You understand what you're looking at. Everything on this chart means something, okay? Now, then we hit OK, and it simply produces our histogram, okay? Now, let's go through the presentation, and we'll get back in SPSS. But now, there's another one that you can do, the box plot. Very useful graph for continuous or scale data. Now, the things that I want to point out about this is that one of the things that this one really helps you do is identify outliers in your data set. This is where your data is pretty much hovered. This would be the mean score right here, this little black line. You'll see that most of the people, what this means, scored above the mean because this is a little bit bigger than down here. Does everybody see that? So these are just things you can start describing the data. In this data set, it seems like most of the people scored above the average. But however, there were two outliers. When you run your box plot and you see the little dots and the numbers next to it, that lets you know those are outliers. Does everybody see that? Yes, no, maybe so. These are outliers. And you're able to now, and you'll see later on, as you start running some of the statistical tests, you're going to have to identify outliers. This may be a way to do that. Okay? So in the total perceived stress variable, we could say most people scored above the average, and there were two outliers in the data set, and there were case number 10 and case number 19. You see that? You can say that now about this picture. Does that make sense? And how the picture is worth 1,000 words? If I had put this up in front of you 15 minutes ago, would you have been able to put text to this? But now you can. Fantastic. Now, how do we do it? And yes, and outliers will affect the average. Yes, definitely. And you'll talk about that a little bit later on, Sydney, in the course, if you're taking the course, and you'll have to look at outliers and determine should you remove them or whatever the case may be. But yes, they do. Now, again, graphs, all you're going to do is click graphs. Now we want the box plot. We're just going to do a very simple box plot. And we'll just do summaries for separate variables this time and define. What variables are you talking about, Dr. Taylor? What are we doing? I know I'm running a box plot, but for what? You hit the define, and we tell it we want it on the total perceived stress. And remember, the little ruler tells us a scale variable, so we know we selected the correct variable, and our assignment won't be wrong, okay? And we know we have two outliers from this variable, okay? Now, what I wanted to do here at this point is, this is for anyone in this course, but those of you that's taking that AD 210 course, the application assignment for visual displays of data, this may be helpful to you. And what I'm going to do now is actually show you the exemplar that I'm going to share with you. And let me find that. Here we go. I'm going to put this in the chat before we leave the class, and you make sure that you remind me if I don't put this in the class before we leave. But here is an exemplar that I put together. And, oh, no, I don't like that. Give me a second. Yeah, this is better. Oops. Now, I tried to align it with the application assignment, with the rubric, etc. But again, here's an abstract. And I really want you to read the forward, because what's important, that I'm saying there's no prescriptive presentation. And it's an example, a play it safe example to ensure critical elements are addressed, okay? Your faculty, someone else may want you to do something different, okay? But anyway, visual displays of data. I start out by talking about what visual displays of data is. Blah, 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 giving some information to show I have knowledge of it, and I cite that. Same thing. The purpose of this paper is to, and again, I present a visual display of nominal variable and one for a continuous variable, which is that week's application assignment, okay? Now, we also have to talk about the unit of analysis, and we did that. The individual was chosen as the unit of analysis, okay? Does everybody see that? Now, and then I talk about the unit of analysis. The unit of analysis is the entity that frames what is being measured, provides some proof of evidence that you know what you're talking about. Then I'm going to say a pie chart, figure 1, was produced for the source of stress variable. We've talked about the pie chart, and what you'll see, figure 1 down here, is the pie chart. okay? You tell us a little bit about the pie chart, okay? And it's indicated that most of the respondents, slightly over 50%, identified work as their source of stress, okay? At the same time, so you make up some narrative from what you see. Remember, your data is going to look different, but you kind of understand now how to talk about it. The next thing you have to do is one for continuous, and I chose a histogram, figure 2 for the total stress variable, a ratio scale of measurement. You're showing that you know the knowledge and you understand scales of measurement. You're showing that you know what graph goes with the scale of measurement, and you're showing that you know how to produce one. Does everybody see that? And you can adjust this accordingly, but this is an exemplar, an example, a place for you to start, not necessarily to finish, but to start, to ease your anxiety. Now, as I talk about scales of measurements and things in these, you'll see that I have a lot of footnotes. For example, histogram and a measurement scale, you see the 3 here. If you go down to the footnotes, I take you to a helpful set of resources that talk a little bit more in depth about whatever concepts we are discussing at the footnotes. Does everybody see that? Fantastic. Okay. And then I just said something. Remember, I talked about a true 0 point value, etc. And then I just said the total perceived stress score, the mean, N is 433. That means the sample. And you can get that from the output. You see right here the graph. You see the mean score. It's going to give you all that information, and the standard deviation. It's all there. So you can talk about that stuff, the standard deviation, okay? And then I went on to say the histogram, apart from a few outliers, suggests normality in the sample. And then you have to say something about social change. Does this exemplar make sense and kind of show you how where you're trying to get? And does the presentation here kind of help you understand what the end product should look like and how to get there? That's the key. You cite wherever that source has come from, yes, okay? Now, I'm going to give you this, okay? And if you accompany me on this journey throughout the term, these are the types of exemplars you'll get for every application, okay? Now, having said that, everyone's anxious. Where did I get this? Where do I get that? Now, you're going to have the exemplar, okay? Now, resources. What I want you to do is use this website. This is the ORDS website, okay? And we're going to go out to the ORDS website, and I want to show you something. We have a ecosystem here that we're building, okay? And I want to show you what that is, okay? So if you go to the ORDS homepage, you'll see that I have been doing these sessions here for a couple of terms, as I've indicated. I'm going to put this link in the chat. If I were you, I would go to this link every week or so. See what Dr. Taylor is offering as an upcoming seminar. You'll see tonight, we're doing the visual displays of data. Okay? You'll see next week, we're going to do descriptive statistics. Isn't that the application assignment for a week, next week? Yes. You'll register here, just as you've registered. This is the abstract. And look at this list of sessions that have already been done and recorded. Scales of measurement. Descriptive statistics coming next week. If you cannot attend the session next week live, click on this link. This will take you to the recorded session, okay? All of these sessions, visual displays of data. I did it back in March. Here's the same thing again, but this will be the live session for tonight, okay? Descriptive statistics. You will be doing bivariate regressions in your course. You're going to be doing repeated measures t-tests. Does everybody get the gist of where we're going here? And this support structure here, even if you can't attend a live session. Everybody, you understanding that link there is there for you, okay? Now, so what I'm going to do now is take this link here to the ORD's website, and I'm going to copy it. And now I'm going to go into the chat, okay? And now copy and paste and get that link out of the chat. Does everybody see that? It should be the very bottom. Now, I'm going to put the exemplar in there, okay? So give me a second on the exemplar. Okay, now I'm getting ready to put the exemplar in there, okay? Now, check in the chat and make sure that the visual display exemplars in there. Does everyone have that? Now, the next thing you need is the PowerPoint presentation, okay? And let me do that for you. Okay, so now we're going to chat and we're going to put the presentation in there now, okay? Exemplar PowerPoint. So my friends, there should now be 3 sources in there. The link to the ORD's webpage where you can always see what sessions are coming up, and you can see what sessions have already been conducted, and you'll have the link to the recordings. Now, here is the knowledge check. You can go here if you want and see, can you answer a few questions about the visual displays of data. What's very important is your opinion, okay? Your opinion. You'll go out here to this survey, and I need to know what you think, okay? I'd be more than happy to turn on the NBA basketball game tonight or whatever I want to look at on TV if you don't feel this is necessary, okay? But you need to tell me what's going on. Is this working? Is it helpful? Do we need to continue, etc.? All righty? So now someone's saying they're not seeing the link again. Is it the link is in there for the everything's in there. I'm not sure why someone is not seeing it. Okay.
Yeah, how do you save it? I don't know how to save on my desktop
I
computer.
don't know how your computer. I don't know. I would just how you would copy and paste the link. I mean, I really don't know. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, I gotta
See
get
if
the
you can
windows ready.
highlight it
Yeah,
and
yeah,
copy and
I can
paste. I don't
highlight
know
it,
if you
but I'm
use.
afraid to
I don't
lose
know
you
if you.
guys. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't know if you use a Mac PC. I don't know, but you can
Okay.
always email me and I can send you the link again. But they're in the presentation.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. Wait,
They're all in
an
the
open link.
presentation.
I
So
think I
yeah.
got
So
it.
the
Open
link that
link.
was in there for the ORD's
Got it.
website. This is the same. Yeah. But I just make a point. That's the
Okay.
same link right here. If for some reason it
Got it.
doesn't work, like you did, you said you would be afraid that it might not work. Just save this PowerPoint and put it in slideshow, and you click or copy and paste that. That'll get you to the same thing. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
All righty. You're very welcome. Okay. So now this is how we will try to proceed as we move forward throughout the term. So if you don't see something when you get the t-test, multiple regression that's coming up, just simply click on one of the other links that will do the same thing that we would do if we were there live. Does that make sense how this thing works? Okay. Any other recommendations or suggestions? That's what we are trying to do here. You can do this with any data set that you want. It doesn't matter, but whatever data set that you have to do for your applications, if you are doing this for coursework, the key is to understand You have nominal and you have non-nominal data, or basically what we call nominal and continuous, and that you just can't run a graph and just click. You need to understand those underlying components or the underlying data structure. And that's the main thing that I want you to understand, the underlying data structure of these, because when we start running t-tests, regressions, we're going to need to know what specific scales of measurement we can use and cannot use. That's going to be very important, okay? So other than that, I don't have anything else. I'm just hoping that this has worked for you, and that it makes sense and it helps you in your quantitative journey. But now, what I always like to do, though, is just ask myself or ask you, did we ease anxiety? How did
Yes.
we do? Fantastic. Lucy yelled that out. And that's great. And that's what we want to do. And just run this slide over and over and over again. Look at your data set, make sure it makes sense, and kind of use that exemplar and adjust as accordingly. Okay? And this is kind of the blueprint we'll follow throughout the term. We good to go? So let me see what you say in your feedbacks, and I will see some of you, if not all of you, was it next week for the descriptive statistics seminar, okay? So what I'll do is that I'll leave the course open a little bit, so if someone wants to get something out of there that they didn't get the chance to get, and you can do that, okay? So other than that, if there's not any other questions, that's all that I have for this evening, and I'll give you back 2 minutes of your time. So thank you very much for your time and attention. And again, hopefully this has been very beneficial to everyone. Okay.
I just had a really quick question. For the next week, Dr. Reggie, I'm gonna just pull up. I feel so ignorant, but I was over here waiting for a link, and then I went back and saw I just had to click on that again. So next week, click on the link and be there, and that's it.
No, there is a registration link. You have to register.
Yeah, I did that. That's why I was waiting
and
for
you should, yeah, and you should, and no, you'll get an email. Okay, you'll get an email back. Again, I suggest you use your Walden email address. It may have went to spam, but when an individual registers, they get an email that tells them this is the date and time and everything, and you're registered for the course. So that's what you do. So let me show you once again here, just to make sure that you understand. Okay, give me just a second. Okay, so let me end show. If you were to go to the ORD's website, okay, you see here, upcoming seminars, visual display of data, registration required. Let's do it. Let me show you here. Here we go now. Next week, I'm going to click here, and you see, it tells you what's happening. You put your information here, you hit register, and you're going to get a confirmation to that email that you put in there.
Okay, I'm going to do that
all the
right
information. With all the information, click this link at that date and time, and you'll be in this session. So everybody got that? Okay, so again, my friends, I have to go now, but anyway, this is kind of the format we'll follow, and we'll hopefully ease and work on anxiety week by week until next thing you know, week 11 is here, and you've done successful in the course, but not that you have passed the course, but you understand statistics now a little bit better. That's the important thing, so that you know how to apply it, you understand it when you read it, and it makes sense to you, and you're not just reading for the sake of reading, or writing for the sake of writing. Okay? Have a good evening, my friends.
Thank you, Dr. Reggie, as always.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Okay,
Very
bye-bye.
welcome.
Bye-bye.